Let's go. Recruit Reaction Saturday. We are back at it again. Welcome in, Tennessee fans. Welcome in, Alabama fans. If you still have the stomach for it, Alabama fans, come on in, get comfortable. We are talking recruiting. Neyland is rocking right now. Smoke them if you got them. Right now, they are smoking cigars at the 50-yard line with Josh Heupel as the goalpost. I don't know if this is a goalpost type game. Is this a goalpost game? Probably not a goalpost game, but they might be coming down anyway because it's Saturday and Tennessee won 24-17. It wasn't always pretty. Nico Iamaleava, 194 passing yards, one touchdown that mattered, and one interception. Jalen Milroe goes for 239 passing yards, one touchdown, and two interceptions. Second one, though, from Milroe coming with a minute 24 to go to seal the game. Will Brooks with the INT. He's from Birmingham, Alabama, and Tennessee goes on to win it. Nico throws the game-winning touchdown. Like I said, it wasn't always pretty from Nico. Let me know what you guys think of Nico's performance. I mean, he got it done when it mattered, right? He threw the game-winning touchdown. It wasn't always pretty. He got it done. There's some plays that he made with his legs. How are you guys feeling after this win? Was this maybe a rite of passage game, maybe a growing up type game for Nico Iamaleava? We'll see what it means, but today it's a big win for Tennessee. Now we're going to talk recruiting. Let's bring in On3 national analyst Steve Wiltfong. Steve, we've been doing these recruit reaction shows every Saturday night, and this one, boy, was this one a fun game to watch. What'd you think of Tennessee's win?
Well, it was awesome win. Way to rally, come from behind, hard-nosed football, to see the offense come alive and play at a high level in the second half, and the defense doing what they've done all year, being disruptive, fast, physical playmakers all over the field. Big sack by James Pierce late in the game, the big interception, Nico being clutch, guys performing at a high level. Did the fans rush the field, Josh?
Yeah, I know we're literally like 3 minutes after the game, but yes, the announcers were saying that the fans were rushing the field. So I don't know if they're going to tear down the goalpost, but the fans are on the field right now.
Well, they should get used to wins like this. You know, this is a new era of Tennessee football. And I know that a lot of guys or a lot of young people that are inside this stadium aren't used to a Tennessee football team that's consistently winning ball games like the one they just did on Saturday. But you and I remember a time when Tennessee was one of the more dominant football teams in college football. They're recruiting to that standard, and they're starting to play like it consistently. This was a huge win. They won't need to be rushing the field after games like this moving forward, because I think that this is just the standard now of Tennessee Vol football.
All right, Steve, talk to me. What does this mean for recruiting? We know that there's a couple key prospects on campus, including Isaiah Campbell, who's one of the top uncommitted defensive linemen. He's fresh off that decommitment from Clemson. He's ranked number 32 in the country, right? Borderline 5-star right now. So Isaiah Campbell is currently on campus for an official visit. He's not the only one. Austin Howard, who's committed to Mississippi State, is also on campus. Got a couple commitments taking official visits, and Darian Smith. Now, Darian Smith, he's locked in. We don't have really any concerns about him, but Jaden Harmon, who flipped from Alabama already, has been back to Tuscaloosa to make a visit. So this was really important for Harmon. But Steve, just talk simply about the recruit reaction right now inside of Neyland Stadium.
Well, I was with Darian Smith on Friday before his game against Center Grove here in the Indianapolis area. He says it's going to take a lot to flip him from the Vols. That's where his mind's at. He's going to take an official visit to Auburn the first weekend in November. But I think it's a tremendous uphill climb right now for the Tigers to flip him. Jaden Harmon told me after his last visit to Alabama that he could potentially flip back to the Crimson Tide. So Tennessee, the timing is right to get him in for an official visit to beat the Crimson Tide. It's such a position of need for the Vols this cycle. Coach Inge and company are targeting a lot of linebackers. Jaden Harmon is one of the most explosive second-level defenders in the country. We have him ranked the highest at On3 for a reason. And let's just talk about Isaiah Campbell. Coming into the visit, he sent me a message on Thursday or Friday saying the thing he was anticipating most about his official visit is the environment. Well, it's hard to imagine a better environment in college football than the one that he just witnessed and contributed to, than watching Tennessee rally to win their rivalry game against Alabama with the sun setting on Neyland Stadium, fans rushing the field, Tennessee's defensive line playing at a high level, Rodney Garner, his track record at the position. His dad told me Tennessee was the leader coming into the visit. The Vols have On3's number 8 ranked recruiting class. It is hard to imagine Isaiah Campbell not being one of the jewels next to David Sanders Jr., next to George McIntyre, next to players like that when it's all said and done. And then getting other commits back too, like Christian Gass. He is one of the most coveted edge players in the SEC country. He's from the Peach State. He visited Georgia earlier this year. He's back inside Neyland Stadium, feeling what that's like, that electricity. Again, when you think of Josh Heupel teams, you're often like, look, those are teams that are going to be fantastic on offense, but Tim Banks has that defense humming right now. They're playing hard-nosed football in the checkered orange right now. Christian Gass was on campus. Lagonza Hayward told me he was 100% to Tennessee last weekend, watching them beat Florida in prime time, Georgia trying to flip him as well. So from a recruiting standpoint, it doesn't get much better than winning the third Saturday in October rivalry. Again, your fans are on the field. Cigars are being lit up all over the place. Some Cohibas, some Macanudos. Do we know what Heupel's smoking tonight? Is the head coach, does he have a more expensive cigar than everybody else? The AD?
I hope so. I hope so. He deserves it. Yeah, they're partying right now on the field, Steve. To answer your question, the fans are on the field. They are partying.
Listen, 2 years ago, this win helped Tennessee wrap up some major recruiting battles. David Hobbs comes to mind right away. They beat Alabama and Georgia and other programs for David Hobbs, who's a key contributor to a very deep and talented defensive line. Mike Matthews, they probably take the lead for their 5-star receiver recruit in 2024. Boo Carter was at the game. And we talked about it on the Wilfong Whipper. It was my first time interviewing George McIntyre. He sent me some pictures of him with Peyton Manning in the locker room after the game. You know, took pictures with other recruits, players on the team. And so the magnitude of this game will be felt for years to come again, because Tennessee hosted some of the best players in 2025, 2026, and 2027.
I mean, you know, the importance of laying the foundation for future classes, it goes off of what you said. I mean, think about it. George McIntyre was in the locker room celebrating in a win very similar to this one 2 years ago. Well, George McIntyre he's the centerpiece of this class. He's the bell cow of this class. And there's a big reason. And I think being in that locker room 2 years ago really gave him that passion for Tennessee and the understanding of what a big game means in Neyland. And that's why I think George McIntyre was able to be such a good peer-to-peer recruiter throughout the summer, because he spent time in Knoxville for games like these. So yes, it's very important for an Isaiah Campbell and for some of the guys that we mentioned, but what about for 2026? I mean, you got Faison Brandon in the locker room right now, Emmanuel Iheanacho, Zion Gibson, Samari Matthews. What's it like for these guys?
Yeah, most of those guys are there. Emmanuel Iheanacho was at Maryland today. Did they beat USC?
It just went final.
So the Terrapins knock off USC.
We'll get to that.
They got Emmanuel Iheanacho there. They got Zion Ely. Zion Ely was at Tennessee last week. But look, these guys, this locker room, when you get around the players after a big win like this, oftentimes recruits, when they come to campus for games like this, they don't get a lot of time with the coaches because they're busy preparing for a massive game. They're with their own players. They're locked in. The finishing touches on a game plan, making sure I's are dotted, T's are crossed. So you're counting on the environment, the atmosphere, the fans, peer recruiting, all those things to take over. And for Tennessee, you couldn't have gotten a better set of circumstances than a close ball game that they rallied to win with a lot of clutch plays and the crowd being a factor. I mean, there were so many penalties, and Kalen DeBoer talked about that crowd being a factor in making some of those penalties happen in the first half with the noise. So, but now you're in the locker room and the players are in a fantastic mood. The coaches are in a great mood. Alums in the locker room, high ranking officials in that school are in the locker room. Look, your infrastructure and your budget is going up with wins like this because it's addicting and people want to continue to win these games. People support winners.
Yeah.
And Tennessee, already one of the more high octane resource programs in the country. But if you keep winning games like this, look, they want to win it all. They want to win the national championship. That's what they're building towards. That's what everything's being poured into. And Tennessee is proving that they can play and beat anybody in college football right now. Big win against Alabama inside Neyland Stadium.
What a great game.
And look, Tyreek King, receiver, in-state, released his top 8 on Thursday. On 300 recruit from Knoxville. My on 3 RPM is on Tennessee. I put that in for him last week. He said it was the loudest environment he's ever been in. So, again, the recruits are already feeling this right now. It's hard to get some reaction right now. Not much cell service inside Knoxville. Recruits are soaking it all in, digesting it all. But what a day. Is Hayes Fawcett with us right now? I want to bring in Hayes. I want to talk to him about George McIntyre. Hayes, George McIntyre could have committed to any program he wanted to in the country. Bryce Underwood and George McIntyre, they were the top 2 quarterbacks on college football staff's recruiting boards. And his decision basically ended up coming down to Tennessee, Alabama, LSU. He had some great interest in Michigan. Jim Harbaugh was his first offer. His dad played for Harbaugh's dad at Western Kentucky. Run us behind the scenes. What do you remember from George McIntyre's recruitment? Did anyone else lead before Tennessee? I know there was some initial Alabama smoke. Was that accurate? And how long was he telling you behind the scenes he was a Vol before he went public?
Yeah, so there was definitely a lot of smoke around Alabama. He actually told me a pretty funny story at the On 3 Elite Series. I think he actually came into the On 3 studio one time and did an interview with Josh and somebody else, he told me. And I remember him telling me, look, I was going to Tennessee the whole time, but he said, like, whenever Josh and others would ask about Alabama, he would light up and stuff. And I think Josh actually put in an RPM for Alabama. And when he saw that, he was, really kind of, I guess, excited. But yeah, no, like I said, he told me at the event that Tennessee was always a school for him. And, huge win tonight.
Can I explain my
RPM for George McIntyre to Alabama?
Yeah.
Lights out. We had him in studio. He was actually one of the first recruits that I think I've ever interviewed here at On 3 in studio. And it was interesting because he didn't say much. He was pretty quiet. And this was before the new year. So it was probably 4 or 5 months before he ultimately decided on Tennessee. So remember, this is earlier in his recruitment. And man, everything he said was pretty bland, except when we talked about Alabama. And he got done with his interview. And I just looked over at my producer, Trey, and I just go, I think it's Bama. And Trey was like, I mean, based on what he said there, he was like, yeah, I think so too. So it wasn't like he really said anything. It was more of just a projection and more of just a feel that I got in that moment. But obviously, over the next 3-4 months, things changed. A bunch of QBs came off the board. Nick Saban retired during that period of time as well. And, it was clear by the new year, by January, February, that George McIntyre was going to be a Tennessee Volunteer.
Yeah, Josh. No, go ahead, Steve. My fault.
No, go on.
He said, like, every time you would ask him a question about Alabama, he would, like, purposely, like, light his face up.
That was all. He did a great job. And George was awesome, man. George, I can't say enough great things about George and just the way he carries himself. And Tennessee's getting not only a great football player, but also a great ambassador to the program and somebody that I believe, we'll see how he plays and all that. But I truly believe that George McIntyre could be the face of this program in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
How about David Sanders, Hayes? Take us behind the scenes on David Sanders' recruitment from your perspective.
From his, I didn't really, he wasn't really telling me, what schools he was necessarily, feeling until, I guess, a few weeks before he committed. Obviously, he visited Ohio State. He had the visit to Nebraska with Dylan Raiola. I didn't really I didn't really have a good feel on it and, like, didn't, have many conversations with him until, he announced his date and then, ultimately told me Tennessee. But, yeah, that's pretty much it with David Sanders.
Yeah, I think there was a time where Georgia was a leader. He grew up a Clemson fan, mainly because he watched Clemson win a lot of games like this one. I think the shower curtain in his bathroom was a Clemson shower curtain. That's how big a fan he was. But Tennessee was on him from 8th grade on. Nobody recruited him harder. He was at every major Tennessee recruiting weekend of the year. There were times where Ohio State maybe made him raise an eyebrow, or even Nebraska made him raise an eyebrow as he was getting close to making his decision. But Tennessee was the one to beat for the final months leading up to his decision. He's one of the jewels of the class. He's on campus this weekend. So are Tennessee's tight end commits, Deshaun Brame and Jack Van Delors Solaire. I obviously I just butchered that. South Lake Carroll playmaker. That's the best tight end class in the country. I know Tennessee is excited about those guys as they try and have an offense that's going to be potent for years to come. Certainly the competition in the quarterback room is going to be second to none. And again, defensively is where they've really changed the whole landscape of this program. Under Coach Heupel, Coach Banks and company, they recruited a lot of high upside, long, fast, physical football players, and they've gotten the most out of them. They've hired some really good position coaches like Rodney Garner to come in and help develop these guys, Coach Martinez and company, and it's all coming together at the right time. And look, these seasons ebb and flow. Tennessee didn't play they wanted to play the 2 weeks prior to this ball game, but they won. They beat Florida last week. They survive, and they get a chance to come in here and play Alabama and get a big win after losing at Arkansas a couple weeks ago, bounce back, beat Florida, and then play well in the second half against Alabama. That's what good teams do. And they'll look to get hot because of it and improve their potential playoff positioning. This SEC is going to be a war, man. And Alabama can't lose again. So we'll see what happens with them the rest of the way, and they may need a little help anyway. So, but massive win for Tennessee. We're going to have a lot of reaction on 3 coming out of this huge Tennessee win.
Oh, man, I can't wait to see what Isaiah Campbell has to say. He's the borderline 5-star defensive lineman edge prospect that is currently on campus taking an official visit. And, Tennessee had been trending in this one, so we'll see. I know we don't have any idea whether or not he's going to make a decision this weekend, but Steve, this is one of those atmospheres where I'm not saying you can press for a commitment, but you can ask a guy, hey, you want to be a part of this? I mean, while the confetti's rolling down, while the smoke's in the air, while the celebration's happening, that's the time you ask, do you want to be a part of this team?
You want to know what this reaction – I just talked to Ryan Mosley, who's on his visit, one of the most coveted players in SEC country out of Carrollton, Georgia. Best game and environment I've been to so far. The place was crazy. It was so loud, gave me chills to be able to play here. After tonight, I'm super excited to be a part of this recruiting process, that they want me to be a part of their program. And what I saw today gave me chills and ready to play on Saturdays. This is definitely a top school for me. Energy is crazy wild. I love it.
I love it. That's why you come to this show. Instant reaction. I mean, who knows? He might be texting you from the field right now. But either way, it's just great to see these committed guys are getting the same feeling. I guarantee you there's a lot of Tennessee fans that have been to this stadium 50 times that still get chills when they walk in. So I'm sure Tennessee fans love hearing that a prospect that's going to be playing on that field is getting chills just watching a game like this. So really fun atmosphere tonight for the Tennessee Vols. They win 24-17. Nico throws the game winner. They're going crazy. Recruit reaction rolling in. We will have more all week on the On3 Recruits channel. But right now, Tennessee fans, let's hear it. How are you feeling? Where are you watching this from? Where did you watch this game from? And how are you going to celebrate? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, Steve. Let's talk some Texas Longhorn recruiting. This game's about to kick off, and the visit list in Austin is absolutely loaded. Justice Terry, Khalid Lockett, Jamie French, Jonah Williams. The 5 stars are there. Isaiah Gibson, Riley Pettijohn. It is an absolutely loaded visit list. That's what you would expect in a game like this. Steve, what are the recruiting implications right now for Texas, Georgia?
Well, obviously for Texas, they're going to have a fantastic environment. They have a chance to test themselves against one of the best teams in the country and show recruits that, hey, again, we are the most dominant team in the land this year. If they beat Georgia tonight, there'll be no ifs, ands, or buts about who the number one team is in America. And for recruits, look, a lot of these guys are leaning towards Texas right now. It's a chance to have a fourth top 5 recruiting class in the last 5 years. So they're recruiting at a level that not many else are matching right now outside of the team that they're playing tonight. And so this is an opportunity for them to show that they are in the SEC and ready to compete for the SEC title right away, because their rival Oklahoma has proven otherwise. And so, we'll see what happens tonight with Texas, Georgia, but they're in great spot for a lot of these blue chippers that are visiting this weekend. They already have the number 6 recruiting class in the country. A lot of those guys will be back. And then again, these are the kind of games that really resonate with your younger players, 2026s and 2027s. They remember these ball games as they get into their recruiting process. These are what formulates where they'll visit later, where they'll come back for official visits. So just huge for Texas all the way around.
Steve, I saw on Inside Texas that they are reporting, well, at least prior to the game, that Isaiah Gibson was going to be there. He's the Georgia edge, the number 1 edge rusher in America, committed to the Dogs for a while. I haven't heard anything about him looking around. Is this just Texas allowing him to come in on a visit just to take a big swing? Or is there something going on behind the scenes that got him on campus with Texas?
Well, this is a new development on my end, Josh. But look, Justice Terry's visiting this weekend, 5-star defensive lineman on an official visit. Texas is playing in a game that not many schools can offer. Look, we are playing in one of the 2 or 3 most anticipated games in college football this season. And with that, elite players want to come to it. And maybe you're maybe it's a long shot. Maybe you're bringing them in just to see if you can make a move and then get them back for an unofficial later. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple guys on campus like Justice Terry where Texas trails for, and you swing your shot and see what happens coming out of it.
Hey, might as well keep them coming. This is a big one. So Isaiah Gibson, I think that he's just in town to see a great game. Now, what about Riley Pettijohn, who's committed to Ohio State? Same thing, or is there a little traction here?
Well, I talked to his dad, and he said that his son's not anywhere close to rethinking his commitment to Ohio State. But the difference between Isaiah and Riley is that Isaiah lives in the state of Georgia, and Riley is committed to Ohio State and lives in the state of Texas. And so we've been around recruiting a lot. Anytime a high-profile recruit that's committed to an out-of-region school visits the in-state powerhouse, my antenna goes up. So we'll see what happens and how Texas performs. Ohio State, very happy with that decision and that coaching staff, but that doesn't mean that they won't finish as the runner-up. We'll see what happens this weekend and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and we are just underway here, still 0-0. Recruits are probably filing into their seats as we speak. Some really important 2026 names on campus, and one of them that really sticks out to me is running back Javian Osborne, because it seems like he's been it to almost I know he hasn't been to everyone, but he's even attended some of these road games that Texas has played in. What do you think about Javian Osborne, the number 3 rated running back in America for the 2026 class, and where things stand with Texas?
Well, he was in Ann Arbor when they smoked Michigan. That was a huge win for Texas. Michigan's one of his top schools. You see Turrentine on the list there. Texas has recruited the offensive line as well as any program in the country since Kyle Flood and Coach Sarkisian and company have gotten to Austin. It's been a huge priority. Just changing the DNA of this program, this culture. They went from a team that wasn't very physical, that maybe had some quarterbacks and some skill talent on both sides of the ball, but around the line of scrimmage, they were soft. They weren't tough. Well, they've reinvented that with some great recruiting on the offensive line and in the front 7, and he certainly fits that mold, that standard, and a guy that could come in and push all the players that they've landed in front of him. And Texas, they recruit that offensive line big. It's kind of that Sam Pittman, Georgia recipe, but they are massive up front. They have a type. And look, Texas is in a great spot for a lot of these elite 2026s. Again, looking for a fourth top 5 recruiting class in 5 years. So they are hitting all the right buttons on the trail.
And I want to bring up one more 2026 name, and that's Tyler Atkinson, the number 1 linebacker in the 2026 class. He's been around some big time games this season, and this weekend he made his way to Austin. Tyler Atkinson also heavily considering Georgia. Could be good to get him in Austin to see Justin Hill perform tonight.
No question. He likes Texas a lot. He's been there before. Ohio State's another front runner. Auburn, USC, a couple others that he's high on. But look, Texas is in the middle of this one, and they're well equipped to win blue chip battles. So we'll see how these shake out. But again, he's going to watch them play at night at home against one of his other favorite schools. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and we will have a ton of recruit reaction all week on the channel coming out of this game. You can go to On3 right now, probably as you're watching this. You could probably go on there right now and see a ton of recruit reaction from Steve Wiltfong. Use promo code FONG1, and you can get On3 for just $1. That's right, On3 for just $1. Go to on3.com and use promo code FONG1. It'll get you there. All right, Steve. We are going to talk a little bit about Javian Hilson. He's been a top prospect that's been trending heavily to Texas ever since his decommitment from Florida State, and he's back in Austin this weekend. I believe this is the second visit this season for Hilson to Texas, so things are heating up here. Is anybody else really giving Texas a run for their money on Javian Hilson?
Well, his recruitment's been fluid, but right now I think Texas is clearly the one to beat, and they're getting him back on campus. They're doing all the right things on the field. He loves Coach PK and that scheme and talking football with him, and feels very comfortable in the way he would potentially fit on within Texas's scheme. And again, they're playing at a high level, and these are the kind of games he sees himself playing. And I love where Texas is positioned for Javian Hilson. And they're putting together a terrific defensive class. I mean, you got a defensive line class when you look at guys like Myron Charles being in the fold for them already. And just, again, the way that they've recruited up front. Lance Jackson's obviously one of the jewels of the class. When you talk about Lance Jackson and Myron Charles, Josiah Sharma, that's another really talented point of attack class. And if you can add Javian Hilson to it, it becomes really special.
Yeah, and it's great that they have all these big-time commitments on campus, including like a Khalil Lockett, Jamie French, Jonah Williams. I mean, that's got to add to an already electric atmosphere and help Texas on the recruiting trail with some of these flip targets, don't you think, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up Jonah Williams and Elijah Barnes. Those are guys that shore up the middle of your defense, guys that are very versatile players in space that find the football, instinctive space eaters. Jonah Williams is arguably the best defensive prospect in the entire class with what he brings to the table as a Swiss Army knife on the back end and how athletic he is. So Texas is going to be playing in these games for years to come. Who's going to be joining the fold moving forward? Wouldn't be surprised if it's a few of the guys that we see on campus tonight in 2025. And certainly a lot of these 2026s and 2027s will ultimately be Longhorns.
That's right. All right, Texas fans, talk to us. Game's going on right now, but recruit reaction will be plenty. Who are you thinking could be the next Texas commit? Anybody that's on campus? Also, who's your top flip target? Let us know in the comment section below. All right, let's talk a little Oregon recruiting. We're going to move to the West Coast. Shout out to Oregon, who had a complete shutout of Purdue on Friday night, 35-0. Oregon gets their shutout. They're currently sitting at number 7 in the On3 industry recruiting rankings. Those are the recruiting rankings. They're currently sitting at number 7, but can they finish top 5? I think there's a few pieces on the board here. I mean, you see Texas ahead of them, Auburn, LSU, Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama, but Oregon sitting there at number 7. They've been up as high as, I think, number 3. They sat at number 4 or 5 for much of the summer. Of course, Texas goes on their run. Auburn gets hot August into September. They go on their run. They're in the top 5, but Oregon's sitting there at 7. There's still some pieces on the board, Steve. They could be moving up.
Yeah, this has got a chance to really be a top 5 recruiting class for Oregon with some of the guys that they're in the mix for. They had a couple 5 stars on campus for their big win against Ohio State, and Buckeyes cornerback commit Naeem Offord. They're in the thick of it for defensive lineman Jakeem Stewart. Are they going to flip 5-star tight end Lincoln Cure? He's going to be on campus next month, or he's aiming to be. Vander Plug's another blue chip tight end currently committed to Washington that visited for the win over Ohio State. They're trending for on 300 linebacker Caleb Burns. I like where they stand with McKay Madsen. So his class is coming together. And look, they're working on guys that we're not even talking about because I think they were close to flipping Hayden Lowe from USC. I wouldn't be surprised if they circle back on that one again. Nate Roberts, probably going to be tough, but I heard they were close to flipping him this fall. Tight end committed to Ohio State. The Buckeyes were able to hold Oregon off there again recently. This is new. This is like a new development. So USC just lost again at Maryland. Hayden Lowe is a guy who has not put his phone down this cycle. So we'll see what continues to happen in some of those recruitments.
All right. Yeah. I want to bring in Hayes Fawcett, kind of slow this Oregon segment down. Go back. I want to go back to July 4th. What were you guys doing when Decorian Moore announced his commitment to Oregon? Hayes, how involved were you in that one? Was this one of these ones that because he had kind of planned it out, but I got the sense that Oregon was like a last minute decision.
Yeah, it was very odd timing. I remember he obviously committed on July the 4th, and he hit me up like real late on July the 3rd, wanted me to put out his commitment date for July 4th. So it really did kind of happen, very quick. In terms of his commitment to Oregon, me personally, I wasn't really expecting it. But I mean, that's
what were you more so expecting?
I mean, I didn't really talk to him much until he got to the point to where he was about to commit. So, like, obviously, he's an in-state kid. I thought Texas would, be the school for him, but committed to Oregon.
Yeah, that was a very memorable moment, going live on his Instagram, only for us to find out with the green and yellow fireworks, of course, for July 4th. So Decorian Moore is a Duck. Now, Steve, he's the number 1 wide receiver in the 2025 class, but what about the number 1 wide receiver in the 2026 class? I'm talking wide receiver Chris Henry Jr., who's already been committed to Ohio State for over a year. But with the Ducks getting hot, I mean, they've never really gone away in Chris Henry's recruitment, have they?
No, there's a lot of trust with Brian Hartline, and he obviously comes from terrific pedigree, and the people around him come from terrific pedigree. So with that, Brian Hartline is trusted to get the best out of him and maximize him in his college career to get him prepared for the next level in the NFL. But Oregon is definitely the biggest challenger for him right now. They've had him on campus. They've continued to push there. I haven't heard his name much lately, but that's because we're locked in on this 2025 class for the most part. But Oregon is a program that has gotten him on the campus and continued to recruit him.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see what happens there. But currently sitting at number 7, what do you think is maybe the ceiling for the Ducks? Because like we said, you got Jakeem Stewart, who's a 5-star defensive lineman. I kind of feel like LSU, Oregon are the main teams there. I know USC and Ohio State are still involved, but I kind of feel like those might be the top 2. And then the other big dog that Oregon could flip is Naeem Offord, and he's a 5-star cornerback committed to Ohio State. So with some of they're obviously not going to close on all of these guys, but could this be a top 5, top 4 class when it's all said and done?
Yeah, definitely would be a second straight top 5 class. They could take another quarterback, Jaron Key Sagapole from Hawaii. They have an offer out to him, and they'd like to take a second high school quarterback this cycle if they can get one. And then we talked about all the other names at the top of the show here. But look, this class is already fantastic. And again, with Oregon, names can emerge here, especially if they keep winning. So they guard your commits, man. I'm telling you, it's like Oregon is, how they sometimes say, guard your wives. Guard your commit here. Guard your commits with Oregon, because Oregon is that handsome man walking into the room right now for a lot of these recruitments.
Yeah, Oregon could be, if Oregon keeps winning, they could be a problem for other teams when they walk in that room with other commits sitting in there. So we'll see what happens. Duck fans, talk to us. Shutout win on Friday night. Momentum is going. Recruits are buzzing. How you feeling about recruiting? What will this class finish? Let us know. Comment section below. Speaking of being hot, let's head down to Coral Gables, where Miami stays undefeated, beating Louisville 52-45. It was an absolute shootout. That's what Cam Ward loves, a nice shootout. The Canes with their fourth 50-point game of the season. They're currently sitting at number 11 in the recruiting rankings. Those are the recruiting rankings. They're sitting at number 11 with 22 total commitments. And next week, the rival Florida State Seminoles come limping into town. And this is going to be a huge recruiting weekend for the Canes, getting many of their top targets on campus. Got some flip targets involved. Got some it's going to be a who's who down in Coral Gables. Well, in Miami, not Coral Gables, but in Miami for that rivalry game against Florida State. You think Miami just brings in, they're going to try to bring in everybody, huh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all the top in-state prospects are going to be on campus. There'll probably be a flip target or two we're not talking about right now. And then certainly the flip targets we know about from DJ Pickett and Ben Hanks and company. And look, you throw out records in that kind of rivalry game. You know that as well as anybody. Florida State just devastating turnovers against Duke last night on the road. They played hard, just came up short. That's a chance for them to turn around their season and spoil Miami's. But the way Miami's playing, particularly on offense, it's going to be an exciting atmosphere. Cristobal always has his team ready to play in big games. And make no mistake, this is a big game for Miami. They don't give a damn what Florida State's record is. They're going to treat that game the same way they treated the season opener against Florida. And so they will be ready to play. They'll play at a high level in that game. I expect them to be dominant against the Seminoles and put on a good show in front of a lot of prospects that could potentially end up playing for them down the road.
Yeah, and some big-time prospects in the secondary, as you see here.
Mm-hmm.
With now, we don't know if these guys are going to be on campus, but these are big-name flip targets that are on Miami's secondary board. You got DJ Pickett, Aiden Andig, a couple LSU guys here, and Miami and LSU have been going back and forth. They took Jabari Antoine from LSU. He's an in-state corner that Miami really wanted. He originally committed to LSU, opened it back up, committed to Miami during the summer. Do you think Miami could double back on some of these other LSU DB commitments?
Well, they're trying. I mean, Pickett's going to be there. He's already said as much. He's going to go back with his dad. He visited for a game earlier this year with his mom. Ben Hanks has already been to one Miami game this year. That's on his radar to get back to this one. I don't know if he'll be there or not. But look, Miami was right there at the end for Jeremiah Smith. They didn't flip him. They're going to be there on the last day for DJ Pickett. Will they be able to get it done? We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, we will be talking a whole lot of Miami this week. Cane fans, talk to us. Who do you want to see on campus? I mean, there's blood in the water. Florida State's coming to town. You can break your rival in front of hundreds of recruits. This is the weekend to do it. Miami fans, let us know who you feel good about coming into this weekend. All right, Steve, we got to talk a little USC recruiting. When I jotted down this segment, the Trojans were up by 2 scores. They go on the road to Maryland and lose. I mean, USC really can't afford this type of loss. It hurts, but we're going to talk a little recruiting because the two are going in opposite directions. I mean,
well, the first half of the season, you look at USC, they go 3-3. They lose 3 one-possession games, just a gut-wrenching loss on the road to Minnesota at night. Certainly the loss to Michigan. You start the second half of the season, you looked at it coming in and you're like, look, these are 6 winnable games with a chance to beat Notre Dame in the finale, not to get ahead of yourself. And they blow a lead at Maryland. It's much of the same. I don't know who's feeling worse right now, USC, Auburn, or Florida State. I mean, USC's right there in the mix. Now, Auburn and USC have great recruiting classes, and they have a lot of promising prospects still out there. Florida State, not so much. So USC certainly in better standing there. But they got to find a way to get some wins here because
yeah, no, I agree. So here's the thing. It's you got two different stories, right? You got the story that's happening on the field where USC is obviously heading in a disappointing direction this season. But off the field in recruiting, I mean, they lost on Sunday and they flipped safety Stephen Miller from Mississippi State. Then on Thursday, massive offensive lineman out of the state of Utah, Aaron Dunn, decommits from Utah, and a day later on Friday, just yesterday, commits to USC. So why are we seeing like two different directions in recruiting versus on the field? And at some point, do you think what's happening on the field could catch up to them on the recruiting trail?
Well, it's hard to say that that's not possible, but I think people that are talking to USC believe in the track record more than the season. So Lincoln Riley's track record of offense, Coach Deonta Lynn, Coach Henderson, Coach Entz, Coach Belk, and their track record of defense. And so they still have great resumes to point towards, but, you know, each of these losses is excruciating. And I think we feel like every week they're going to get back on track. I mean, I guess I can't speak for you, but I thought they'd go to Maryland and get a dub and start getting it rolling in the second half. And now they got 5 winnable games left with a chance to beat Notre Dame in the finale. But each time they lose one of these close games to teams that I don't think are as talented as them, it's kind of brutal.
Yeah, it hurts. And right now, sitting at the number 10 ranked class in America, still very good. And it could finish very good, but
a lot of promising players out there that are high on USC.
Yeah, but if you're going to jump at Texas A&M, if you're going to jump at Tennessee, Oregon, in the end, you got to win these games.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But despite the loss today, USC is still hot on the recruiting trail. A top 10 class. It looks more and more like Julian Lewis. Julian Lewis did not take a visit to Indiana. You know, the Indiana staff was really working hard to try to get him to that Nebraska game, and for good reason. But, you know, Julian Lewis doesn't show. So at this point, there's no reason to believe that he is going to go anywhere but USC right now until he shows up at some. What's that?
Talking to a source down in Georgia, I think Julian Lewis got home really late from his game on Friday, is what I was told. You know, I don't know, man. He coming out of his visit to USC, there's a lot of confidence that he'll stick, but he's still taking visits. Colorado gets a win. He's word is he'll be in Boulder next weekend. So we'll see if he's out there in Boulder. Then Indiana, the Nebraska game was new. The Indiana-Michigan game has kind of always been on the radar for him to get back to Indiana for a third time this year. And then I think there's always been some dialogue here, some dialogue there with some programs we don't really even talk about. So, we'll see what happens with Julian Lewis and USC.
All right. Well, despite the loss today, USC still fighting on the recruiting trail. They have a top 10 class.
Great class.
Yeah, really
great best receiver class. Great receiver class. One of the top most coveted. Their top quarterback in the country is committed. A bunch of difference makers on defense. 4 losses by 1 score.
Yeah, and they just added a massive offensive lineman that decommitted from Utah on Thursday. Aaron Dunn commits to USC on Friday. So the pieces are there. I mean, 23 total commitments. And so far, they haven't lost anybody due to their play on the field. They've only added. So we'll see if this trend continues. Trojan fans, I know you're disappointed with the product on the field, but how are you feeling about recruiting? Is this a class with instant impact players? Let me know. Comment section below. And also, who do you want to see USC finish with on the recruiting trail? Let me know. Comment section below. All right. We got to talk a little breaking news. And we're talking Jared Curtis, the 5-star quarterback out of Nashville. He's in the 2026 class, the ranked number 2 overall at the position. He decommitted from Georgia on Thursday night. It was Thursday night. My days get all confused, but it was Thursday night. Jared Curtis, kind of out of nowhere, decommits from Georgia, number 8 player overall, committed to the Dogs in March, decommits in October. We got some schools in the mix. We're going to break this down. I want to bring in Hayes Fawcett as well, because this is kind of an interesting one. Hayes, take us kind of behind the scenes of when you started hearing this smoke from Jared Curtis that he might be reopening his recruitment?
So he hit me up the day before he announced, and he actually told me he was planning on doing it about 2 or 3 weeks from the date. Um, and then he just told me like, "Hey man, like I can't really get this off my mind. I'm gonna go ahead and do this now." Made the call to Georgia, told the staff, and then the next day, he ultimately decommitted from the Dogs.
Man, so it all kind of happened like within like a 48-hour period. I mean, obviously it was on his mind, but his
Mhm.
decision to do it on Thursday just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Mm. All right. Steve, take us behind the scenes of this one. Why do you think Jared Curtis pulled his commitment from Georgia?
I think it just ultimately he feels like he committed too early and he wanted to continue to have dialogue and visit other programs to be sure of his decision. And with that, when he was taking visits, he would call Mike Bobo, he would call Kirby Smart, he would call Coach Van Gorder over at Georgia, so they would know from him and not the internet that, hey, I'm going out to USC this summer, or hey, I'm going to go to the South Carolina LSU game. And the Georgia staff was first class. So they were like, great, man, go. But remember, you're a dog. And so I think just that song and dance alone was just hard. And so, and he said as much, said, hey, look, I don't want to be one of those quarterbacks that's committed to a school. And then he said, not that there's anything wrong with it, but we all know that when you're the quarterback and you're out there taking visits elsewhere, it's just different. And so he didn't want to do that. And he wants to be able to do his own thing and not worry about hurting anybody else's feelings too. So
Right.
he decommits from Georgia. They're still in the mix. I talked to Jared Curtis today. He's going to be back for the Tennessee game, the Georgia-Tennessee game in Athens. He looks forward to getting around those coaches he loves again, getting around those recruits. But Georgia's in a battle, right? He's going to take a visit to Auburn November 2nd for their game against Vanderbilt. Now, they're just now getting back involved. His high school coach has a relationship with the Auburn staff. Oregon's a program that I think needs to be taken very seriously in the Jared Curtis sweepstakes. You asked me about Jared Curtis and his recruitment and the domino effect in the video that we had when he decommitted. And I said, well, I don't know how it'll impact the dominoes because the schools that we were talking about the most at the time did not have a quarterback committed, but Oregon does. They have Jonas Williams committed from Bolingbrook, Illinois. Now, Oregon, they're trying to sign 2 in this class. Maybe they only sign Achilles Smith Jr., and then they pivot and try and sign 2 in 2026. And if you get Jared Curtis and Jonas Williams, that's a hell of a 2 quarterback class. But Jared Curtis is very high on Oregon, had a great visit out there, loves Will Stein, the offense, everything Oregon's doing on and off the field. I look for him to get back to Oregon at some point. There's not a visit set for them. Then you also have Alabama. You got Clemson. You have South Carolina. He loves the way that they kind of resurrected Spencer Rattler's career in Columbia and turned him into a draft pick. South Carolina's playing some exciting football. They hammered Oklahoma today. And we'll see who else comes into the picture. You know, Ole Miss maybe gets in there. They don't have a quarterback committed in 2025 right now. But that's kind of where it stands. You got Georgia, you got the Auburn visit and the Georgia visit. And I think Oregon's a team that's really got a chance to make a major move with Jared Curtis as he continues with his process.
All right, let's bring back that graphic of the top 10 2026 quarterbacks. So you can see here the 2 orange at 2 and 3. Those are the only 2 uncommitted top 10 quarterbacks for 2026. So really the dominoes fell this offseason and into the fall. You got Faison Brandon going to Tennessee, Dia Bell to Texas, Brady Smeagol, he's Florida State, Jaden O'Neal, Oklahoma. Like you said, Jonas Williams, he's committed to Oregon, so you think they could get in the mix. But Hayes, I want to talk to you a little bit about Ryder Lyons. He's sitting there at number 3. We talk about him a lot on the show with USC, but you've been communicating with him a little bit. Who do you think are the top teams for Ryder Lyons? And does Georgia show interest in Lyons now that they don't have a quarterback?
Yeah, definitely. I exchanged some texts with Ryder Lyons before the Jared Curtis decommitment happened, which at the time he didn't know about happening. And we were, communicating. He wanted to put out a top schools, but essentially wanted to wait to see about Georgia because he said Georgia had been picking up steam with him heavily and was kind of debating whether to put him in or not. And obviously, in my opinion, with Jared Curtis decommitting, maybe Georgia goes after Ryder Lyons hard. I don't know.
All right. Yeah. We've seen through the years a lot of these guys make these early commit. I mean, Dylan Raiola comes to mind. He committed to Ohio State before Georgia, really, So uh so we're talking about Jared Curtis kind of getting his first commitment out of the way. So Steve, I know Jared Curtis, fresh off this decommitment, isn't thinking about a commitment per se, but what's a realistic timeline for Jared Curtis to make another decision?
Well, my guess is that he is going to go to some games this fall, and then that takes you into the off season, right? I think that he'll take official visits in the spring, maybe some in the summer, and make another commitment. He is not in any hurry.
Yeah.
He is as talented a thrower of the football as there is in the country, regardless of class. He is coveted by several schools. There'll be some new suitors. He's just now getting to know the new Alabama staff, wants to reconnect with Clemson. So I don't think we're going to see anything quickly. He already went through it once and was kind of quick to make a decision. And I think they thought in that moment that he was going to be done with it. But they found out real quick that these schools weren't going to stop communicating. Chip Kelly went into school as soon as he could. Ohio State's a factor. And South Carolina, Dow Logans never went away. So I think he'll take his time. My guess is that he'll make his decision sometime in the next calendar year.
Okay. All right. Well, let us know. Comment section below. Where do you guys think Jared Curtis is going to end up? Will he end up being a dog in the end? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, Steve, let's head to your home state of Indiana, where the Indiana Hoosiers drag Nebraska 56-7 at home. I took Indiana. You took Nebraska. It wasn't even close.
I didn't take Nebraska.
You took Nebraska in our predictions.
No, I didn't.
You took Indiana? Okay, I'm going to have to go back to the tape.
I took Indiana rolling. And I think, no chance.
Okay, I got to go back. Maybe I took Nebraska.
I think you took Indiana also. I think the one we disagreed on was Georgia and Texas. I took Georgia. You took Texas. We were a wash across the board. But don't put words in my mouth about my Indiana Hoosiers.
Well,
I was excited to talk about them on Whip Around, and there's no program I'm more excited to end recruit reaction about than the Indiana Hoosiers. And then they got a huge win, a dominant win, dominated on both sides of the ball like they have all year. Number 4 offense in the country, number 6 defense in the country. Plug and play at quarterback. Rourke gets hurt. Taven Jackson comes in. The offense is still going up and down the field. They drop over 50 points on Nebraska. Tristan Abram, touted defensive lineman from St. Louis, the jewel of their class, tells me that he is 100% locked in with Indiana. He's going to take an official visit to Michigan. He's already been to Michigan once this year. He said Michigan's definitely got to prove something to him on his next visit, because he was blown away again by another visit to Indiana. And so the Hoosiers in a good spot there. I think they're close to flipping Tyrone Burris from Louisville. He's an in-state edge rusher. That his decision was close anyway. I talked to his dad after the game, and he said it really came down to the wire between Louisville and Indiana as it was, and he didn't know about, he knew what this coaching staff had done in previous places, but there was some questions about how it would be in Bloomington in the development process. No more questions. Byron Baldwin, on 300 defensive back, maybe committing soon. Colorado trending, former Indiana commit, played his game Friday night, decked out in Hoosiers gear. Is this a win that helps Indiana regain traction with Byron Baldwin? He said it could.
That would be surprising.
Yeah, it would be surprising to me too. But look, I was with them on Friday, and I don't think anyone was anticipating 56-14 or whatever it was also. Again, I mean, so look, my pick's on Colorado, but Indiana couldn't have had a better day in trying to get Byron Baldwin to come back full circle and go with them.
That's how you do it.
And it was a tone-setting day with some in-state recruits that they've offered, Josh. Casimir Hicks is one of the best two-way players in the state of Indiana. He'll eventually have 30 offers. He already has one from Indiana. Indiana's one of the early favorites. Tayshawn Bardo's a receiver from up near South Bend, Indiana at Mishawaka Penn. He could see himself at Indiana. The number 1 recruit in the state in 2027 is Monshun Sales. he had a fabulous visit today, talked about it being a very great future. And then Davian Chandler is one of the jewels of the class, 4-star recruit in the on 300. He's told me Illinois, Vanderbilt were some schools still coming after him, but he is locked in with Indiana, playing all his games in Hoosier gear as well. Julian Lewis was not there today, but again, saw a plug-and-play offense, saw one of the more prolific offenses in the country. Nobody has shown that they could stop it. Nebraska came in with a top 10 scoring defense nationally and gave up over 50 points. And so, look, they'll try and get Julian Lewis to the Michigan game. He was not able to come to this ball game. That was kind of a pop-up thought anyway. Hey, come to the Nebraska game. Michigan's kind of always been on the radar as they try and flip him from USC and try and beat Colorado as well. Hearing he could be at Colorado next weekend for the Cincinnati game. So we'll see if he makes it back out to Boulder. But conversations remain regular with Indiana and Julian Lewis. No relationship better than the one he has with Tino Sinceri. And again, he sees an offense he could be successful in. Josh, I think you and I could throw for 200 yards in that offense the way it is schemed up on Saturday. It is clicking at a high rate, and so is the Recruit Reaction Show. So glad to finish episode 8 with you guys. Hayes, bring it. Hayes, anyone talking about Indiana to you behind the scenes yet? What would it take for you to make an IU edit? Like,
hey, I'll tell you what,
how
Steve,
does a school like that rise up in your social media? Because I feel like they get good social media buzz. What's your take on the Hoosiers and maybe a Hayes Fawcett edit down the road?
I'll tell you what, last cycle I definitely made one for Tyler Cherry. I believe he was on 3's number 6 quarterback in the 2024 class. But yeah, I mean, if anybody from Indiana hits me up, I'll do it for sure.
Hey, Steve, I got a question. This is maybe getting a little ahead of myself here, but if Indiana continues to roll, could we start hearing Kurt Cignetti's name come up for jobs? And could that be an issue for Indiana on the recruiting trail, their success?
Well, we'll see what happens. I think he obviously is the hottest name in the country, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you talk about Florida, Cignetti, his offense and his defense are playing in a way, in a style that Florida would love to be playing. You also got James Franklin, who has Penn State in the top 10 every year. And then I'll throw out a name that would be fun for Florida too, is Fran Brown, Syracuse coach. You put him in the corner office at Florida, I see number 1 recruiting classes in the country. Now, Fran's still proving himself, but he's doing a great job right out the gate at Syracuse, as they are one of the early contenders in the ACC. But all I know is that I'm 42 years old. I live in the Indianapolis area. This was the first home game that Indiana has played as a ranked school since the early 1990s. So it is a new era. We have them in the playoff right now, right? I mean,
I would assume so. I haven't seen the latest playoff projections.
Well, they're now favored over, they're going to be favored over Michigan. So now the only game that they will not be favored in, that they play the rest of the way, is Ohio State.
Right.
So 11-1
should get you there.
Does that get them in the playoff if they beat everybody and just lose to Ohio State and maybe a close ball game? Are they in the playoff? The Indiana Hoosiers, baby. One of the recruits told me they're a football school now.
I love it. All right. Recruit Reaction is, we love talking. One day, Steve, we might lead this show with an Indiana Hoosier thumb. Just putting it out there. We'll see. If they keep rolling like the way that they are, we might have to do that. But Steve, it's been great talking Recruit Reaction. I love this show. Just you and Hayes bring an angle that nobody else has after these games, and we are getting instant recruit reaction, and we will be back on next Saturday. We're going to do it all over again, but all week we'll have the Inside Scoop on Sunday. We'll have the Wiltfong Whip Around on Monday, the 5-Star Flex all week. Make sure you guys are subscribed and be back here next Saturday for another recruit reaction. We love doing this. We love hanging out with you guys. See you next week.